Experience the future of packaging and processing up close and in action. Explore groundbreaking innovations, engage with hands-on solutions, and connect with the experts transforming the industry. See how these advancements can revolutionize your products, production lines, and business. It all starts here. Don't miss out. Register today at packexpolasvegas.com/unpackedpod. You're listening to Unpacked with PMMI, where we share the latest packaging and processing industry insights, research, and innovations to help you advance your business. Hi, and welcome to another edition of Unpacked with PMMI. I'm your host, Sean Riley, and today we're coming to you on site in Philadelphia at the Pennsylvania Convention Center for PACK EXPO East 2020. If you're not among the 7,000 attendees, which is probably going to be a new record for PACK EXPO East, that have come through the doors this week, I have with me Matt Reynolds, editor of Packaging World. He's been on the pod before, so you're all going to recognize the name. And he's going to tell us a few of the things that you would have seen if you were here and should have been here to see. Matt, first of all, how's it going?
Going well. Yeah, a lot of attendees. Good show so far.
That's what I like to hear. So I guess, it's really the world is your oyster. You tell me, you went up there, you walked the floor. What things jumped out at you? What's happening? What are attendees talking about? Basically, what's the buzz?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of continuation of what we saw in Las Vegas and other shows and so on. The big thing right now in the materials side is the move to monomaterials, specifically polyethylene. The 2-HDPE channel of recycling is one that I saw specifically here at the show, at the Color Masters booth. That's a converter that does pouches and so on for various industries. Pet food, chicken is a big one that they're into as well. So what previously existed as a multi-layer material, specifically for chicken with barrier properties and so on for, whether it's frozen chicken, now is available in an HDPE material that is easily recycled. Now, HDPE, unlike straight PE, will be recycled into the manufacturing industry. So it's not going to be recycled back into other bags, I don't believe.
Okay.
But still, it's a step in the right direction. And it's just one example of the many that I've seen recently of companies reaching these goals of mono materials. Now, they're not there yet in terms of fully functional or being accomplishing everything that everybody wants, but they're definitely moving in that direction.
That's fantastic. I'm not going to lie to you. When you said first pet food and then chicken, I made a correlation to people having chickens as pets or feed for chickens.
I'm sure that would be a perfectly useful.
So I was going to ask, and I'm glad that you specified that it was for actually poultry that was going to be purchased. Okay, so now I'm glad that we could clear that up without me having to bring it out there. I guess, are there any other things sustainable, recyclable wise? I know that's been it's been a hot topic forever, but the last time we talked, that was something that, we touched on. Is it something you're still seeing up there?
Yeah, it's omnipresent. It's everywhere. So the materials are one side of it. Then for machinery, we're talking about reducing power inputs and voltages and whatever that might be, reducing waste. It's just so omnipresent. It's hard to nail down one little thing because it really does touch everything. I guess one example is in Europe. Frequently, you'll find on store shelves in Europe in retail settings, beverages, whether that's, large, 1 liter or half liter beers packaged together in some sort of shrink film or shrink wrap. Mm-hmm. We're seeing even Coca-Cola would be doing that or had traditionally done that. We're seeing a move towards paperboard as a carton, paperboard cartons as a replacement for plastic, just to deal with the perception that plastic carries with it amongst the public. Now, that's not necessarily addressing things like lightweighting and overall carbon footprint. I mean, I don't know what the calculus is there because paperboard could potentially be heavier and thus, require more gasoline for travel from one to the other. But regardless, bigger companies in Europe are making that move to paperboard, just specifically for beverages, but other packs that had been shrink wrapped.
Interesting. Okay, outside of sustainability, recyclability, I feel like we would talk about that forever at every event. Let's get something else that whether it's been in the news or you've been covering for Packaging World, something that's up there on the show floor that is also touching things that you've heard.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot more willingness to talk about cannabis industry. One article that we actually did recently was on Arizona producer or a grower and producer and packager called Harvest Health. So actually on the show floor was the identical machine to the one that they purchased from Massman. Now, this was a pouch filler and sealer. So we're seeing a lot more companies embrace the cannabis industry as it sweeps kind of westward from its inception on the West Coast and into the East Coast.
It's interesting you say that because I did actually sit in and listen to your colleague, Jim Curzan's presentation on cannabis at the innovation stage at PACK EXPO East. And he had actually made a very point that I never really thought of, but he said that coming from the cannabis industry side of it, well, he's not coming from the cannabis industry side of it, but speaking, having talked to them a lot, he's saying that for OEMs, it's time to start treating cannabis also seriously when they come into your plant. He said sometimes it's a giggle and a whatever about how you're doing. These are serious businesses with serious, cash flow and, capital that are coming to invest. And a lot of times they're very put off by the fact that you're going into a machinery and an OEM willing to buy this, and you're kind of being dismissed as sort of this rogue industry. So I guess you're saying on your end that, the OEMs are willing to admit that they're kind of jumping into it. So it's also interesting that from the other end, that's going to help because they are a little put off by the fact that they're, popping up and being laughed at, so to speak.
Yeah, what we're seeing especially in some of the more recent companies that are getting into cannabis is they're brand owners. They have a brand owner mentality. They come from the industry. They come from, P&G or Coca-Cola. They come from big brand owners that already exist. And that's the mentality that they're taking, as opposed to, there's still a significant amount of career changers and entrepreneurs and so on. But the bigger companies now are looking more professional, more experienced in logistics and supply chain and these types of things. And the industry as a whole is being recognized for what it is. And it's just another CPG. It's a consumer product.
That's good to hear.
And I think that willingness is drawing the OEMs themselves into being willing to talk about it, and to talk about their products as their machines being capable of producing this perfectly legal product in many states. And
we're located. This is in Philadelphia, and in the Pennsylvania, it's medicinally you can get it, and in most of the states in tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, Delaware, Maryland, it's at least medicinal. Some are moving towards recreational. But with that in mind, did you see examples on the show floor of people besides Massman who are, even if they weren't directly pointing to it, but we're showing examples of how they are trying to target that market?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of labelers, for instance, out there were demonstrating small PET or small containers that could be used for the flower. Various other, those kinds of labelers could also be used for vape pens and so on, where they're still being used. So multiple applications, and it's not just the flower itself. We're also talking about gummies, what could be chocolate bars, and these kinds of things. And again, the idea is that from a packaging perspective, that gummy or that chocolate bar is identical to what would be a traditional gummy or chocolate bar. The THC or the CBD, whatever it might be, that's added upstream. That might be a processing issue, but it's not a packaging issue. So the willingness to embrace the industry is becoming more and more of a trend.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, beyond cannabis, which is another thing that we could talk about a bunch. What else is happening up there?
Yeah, well, one ongoing trend, and this has been true for years, but we're just seeing it continue because I mentioned Massman once already. Massman recently purchased another company, an integrator, DTM. Also, Allfill has recently acquired Repack, a labeler. So we know about the Promoc, the Duravant, and the Barry Waymiller models, but it's elsewhere as well. And the value to the brand owner is the ability to, instead of having to go out and find 5 different machines that accomplish 5 different tasks and get them all to talk together, but to create these end-to-end solutions, everything from the filling right down to
one-stop shop.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like turnkey solutions you hear a lot. More and more frequently, we're seeing examples of consolidation in the industry. And I think it's a consolidation that doesn't remove that element of individuality, because a lot of times these brands will retain their identity.
Because that's sometimes consolidation can be heard as a bad thing. That's why I was actually, you beat me to it by saying that it seems like it's not being viewed as a bad thing because they're maintaining their individuality.
Yeah, and there's some economies of scale that can be accomplished without losing individual brand identity, and what one company does well is what's sought. That's why these companies are being bought, is because they're doing something well, and the larger companies don't want to lose whatever that secret sauce that made them tick to begin with, that made them seek them out, make the purchase. So again, ongoing acquisitions that lead to consolidation, but I think ultimately lead to more value for the brand owner amongst the folks that were walking around upstairs. Yeah.
All right. How about anything touching on the supply chain or anything like that bigger than just, that kind of ties the packaging and the processing and all of that stuff together? Anything up there rumbling about that?
Yeah. I mean, we're turning on any of the news channels. There's a lot going on in terms of politics and the coronavirus, for instance, and certain areas of the world where there might be some semblance of unrest. So what we're hearing murmurs of is these factors are not yet specifically affecting OEMs. But one thing I did hear about was the brand owners themselves seeking OEMs spare parts, basically. OEMs that have big spare parts or aftermarket business, their customers are asking to actually take on inventory.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering where that was going, and I hadn't even thought of that. Okay.
So consider wear parts or something that, when you were getting towards 95% of life or whatever it might be, that would be the time when that brand owner would call up and order two more to specifically avoid having to keep inventory of lots of parts.
But times have changed right now,
And who knows where, in terms of supply chain and possible supply chain disruptions, it's a matter of stocking up on some of those parts. Now, the specific materials, I haven't heard yet whether that's aluminum or whatever that might be.
Right.
But just in case, these brand owners are definitely planning ahead for potential supply chain disruptions. One area that will probably see greatest impact might be amongst nutraceuticals, vitamins. There are certain types of ingredients that are, I say ingredients, but it could be a vitamin or a nutraceutical, that are only produced in China or have very limited production anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
So the kinds of stuff that you purchase at a GNC or something like that might be more and more difficult to find. I know Coca-Cola, for instance, a significant percentage of the aspartame that is used in, the ever-present Diet Coke, came from China. So they, of course, a company like that has the foresight and vision to be able to source elsewhere, but they did have to move some things around to make sure that they're not having any supply disruption.
That is one that I had heard, that sugar substitutes, a lot of that comes from overseas, and that is something that the prices are going up on, or had already started to go up on because of anticipated, disruptions.
Right.
I mean, we hit a bunch of good things. I mean, we hit things that are of interest and that are in the news. Is there anything else out there that you think we didn't touch on?
These are all incremental trends that we've seen in the past, but bears mentioning that we see them continuing. One last one I saw, there was a company that was doing 3D printing using the HP jet fusions. I think the company's name was NCS. But 3D printing, as historically, has been a means of prototyping, fast prototyping, fail fast, that kind of thing. But more and more, we're seeing companies that are actually using them as production parts. And in an era where there could be potential disruption to supply chain, the option to print a part on, either the OEM printing the part or the brand owner himself printing a part, or a third party somewhere in between printing the part and having that availability to have that on hand at any time is interesting. And
that is an interesting option that I hadn't even thought of, that keep waiting for 3D printing to kind of pop. And this could be that type of situation where they can't get it from other places. They have to use what they have to sort of solve their own problem. And if they have a 3D printer, it would be a way to solve that with making their own parts. Well, I really appreciate you taking time from the show floor to, sit down with us and share this with our listeners. I'm sure we'll have you back on again, because these are always great conversations. We always hit on everything inside of packaging and outside of packaging sometimes as well. With that, thank you for listening to this edition of Unpacked with PMMI. Be sure to join us next time for more packaging and processing industry insights. Please rate, review, and subscribe. To do that, go to the iTunes podcast or Spotify app on your phone and search for Unpacked with PMMI.